This is the Hey Ed YouTube channel, and I am your host, moderator, and all-around nice guy, Edward Anderson. And today we're going to be talking about Putin's checkmate. Okay, so this video has been a few weeks in the making because there's a lot of material that I want to pile into this, but I didn't want to do it in a way that didn't make sense. So there are two things that I believe. There are a lot of things I believe, but two that are relevant for this video. The first one is when your enemy tells you what he's going to do to you and that he means you ill, you take him at his word, okay? And number two is when your enemy is making really bad mistakes that's going to lead to their own demise, you stand back and let them make the mistakes. Okay, so the second one, that's what Putin is seeing right now. He's seeing the glaring mistakes that the West has made over the past couple of decades, and those mistakes have put us in a very precarious position. And he's laughing the entire way and put them in a very unique position to help us along the way toward imploding. And then I want to take a look at some of the words that he used that we should be paying attention to and taking them at his word. Let's start by taking a look at some of his words in a speech that he made just prior to his invasion of Ukraine. Now, this speech will give you a kind of context to the way he sees things, which is important. You want to understand your enemy's viewpoint so that you can best understand your enemy. It's all about understanding your enemy, right? So let's take a look. All right, so in the words of Mr. Putin, we look in amazement at the processes underway in the countries which have traditionally been looked at as the standard bearers of progress. Of course, the social and cultural shocks that are taking place in the United States and Western Europe are none of our business. We're keeping out of this. Some people in the West believe that an aggressive elimination of entire pages from their own history reverse discrimination against majority in the interest of a minority, and the demand to give up the traditional notions of mother, father, family, and even gender. They believe that all of these are the mileposts on the path towards social renewal. Listen, I would like to point out once again that they have a right to do this. We're keeping out of this. But Russians have a different opinion on this matter. And he goes on to say, the advocates of so-called social progress believe they are introducing humanity to some kind of a new and better consciousness. Godspeed, hoist the flags, as we say, go right ahead. The only thing that I would like to say now is that their prescriptions are not new at all. It may come to a surprise to some people, but Russia has been there already. After the 1917 revolution, the Bolsheviks, relying on the dogmas of Marx and Engels, also said that they would change existing ways and customs. Finally, there is one more point I would like to make. We understand all too well that resolving many urgent problems the world has been facing would be impossible without close international cooperation. However, we need to be realistic. Most of the pretty slogans about coming up with the global solutions to global problems that we have been hearing since the late 20th century will never become reality. Okay, and let's look at this one sentence. In order to achieve a global solution, states and people have to transfer their sovereign rights to supranational structures to an extent that few, if any, would accept. On that point, he's dead right. If we want to achieve these global fairy tale solutions, you're going to have to give away your sovereignty, both personal and national, and turn it over to some superstructure organization, some unelected elite officials somewhere out there. Do the words Klaus Schwab and the WEF ring a bell? This is what he's talking about. He's talking about these global elitists who want to negate our national sovereignties. And we have a lot of people in every country in the world who are either members or shadow members of the WEF. But this is what he's referring to, okay? He's referring to that notion of us foregoing our personal sovereignty, our personal freedoms in order to achieve the big objectives. Like this brilliant idea that some elitists came up with, that the solution to the food crisis is for all of us to start eating bugs. That's an actual serious recommendation put out there by some weird, stupid elitist. But solutions like that are the ones that are already being pushed by many of our governments. So He's right on that point. Okay, so obviously he's making a commentary here about the degradation of Western morals, Western values that put us in this precarious position. Because as our morals decline, as our values decline, these radical progressive policies float to the surface and they become policy. And those policies have led us to the point that we're in today. This whole idea of globalization, this whole idea of Green New Deals, this whole idea of fairy tale solutions to our problems is what put us in this very difficult position. So there you have it. Those are some of the words of Vladimir Putin. We have to know what our enemies are saying and take them at their word. I don't know about you, but I've read the works of Klaus Schwab, the Fourth Industrial Revolution, the Great Reset. You got to understand what your enemies are thinking so that you can counter it. So that's what we want to do. We want to look at what they're doing and want to look at our current situation and then see what's coming. And I will tell you why Vladimir Putin is in a position to help us along the way, us Western countries, to self-destruction, okay? He is saying we're not going to give in to those elitists at the World Economic Forum. So on that point, okay, I got to agree with him. Not that I think he's a nice guy. I don't. I think he is evil, okay? But I think Klaus Schwab is more evil. My friend Rob Bruss and I disagree a little bit on who takes the number 1 and number 2 spot there, about who's the most evil person in the world. Okay, so there you have it. Vladimir Putin is not a globalist. Okay, he does not believe in the globalist solution. He believes in sovereignty, and he believes in protecting his own sovereignty. All right, so let's move on. Okay, so now let's talk about how the West, primarily the EU, has set themselves up for their own failure. Okay, so now let's talk about how the EU has made their own bed. Okay, and now they've got to sleep in it. Now, okay, the policies that they've followed for the past couple of decades have really set them up for an implosion, has really set them up for their own demise. All of the really bad economic conditions that are going on right now in the EU are the fault of their leaders. It's their own fault. So let's get into that. Okay, so the financialization has turned the global economy into a house of cards. We are debt-based societies, okay? Now, if we get into trouble, we print more money. More debt, more debt, more debt, okay? Whereas Russia and other countries are more commodities-based. All right, so we're all based on debt. Now, what's debt? Debt is money. Money is made up stuff. It's coming out of thin air. It's fairy dust. It's not real. It's fugazi. It's fake, all right? Meanwhile, we still have to have a house to live in. We still have to have a car to drive. We still have to have food to eat. Okay, so we get that from other places. But Europe and America, okay, we're just based on debt. Okay, but we still have to live. We still need real things. Okay. Okay. So what was Europe's solution for all this? How did they set their own trap? All right, let's take a look. Okay, so here's the chart of the interest rates at the ECB. Okay, now you can see back here, over here around the 2009 level, interest rates came down, went up a little bit, and they were right in here. This is the zero, right? This solid white black line, that's zero. Then they went negative. They had negative interest rates. Okay, so now when you put money in the bank, where before they're paying you interest, now you're paying them interest to keep your money in the bank. But what's the effect of this? Okay, so the effect of low interest rates or negative interest rates is it creates buying. It creates economic activity. It's cheaper for you to get a house, to get a car, to get a boat. So economic activity explodes. People take on debt, right? They go out and take out loans because the interest rates are so low. They take on debt and debt and debt. And so that is how they become a debt-based economy. And as long as they can keep interest rates really, really low, they can get away with it. But for how long? Okay, and we can see the results of all that new debt activity with this chart showing the ECB balance sheet just exploding. So this is the effect of keeping interest rates low for so long. This is what a debt-based economy looks like. So by keeping interest rates so low, their balance sheet has exploded. And they've been able to get away with that because they've had access to very cheap energy, services, and products, right? And this is where the plot starts to thicken. Well, when energy is cheap, everything else is cheap, right? Because you need energy for everything. Everything is made with energy. Okay, here we see the chart of natural gas. All right. Now you can see how cheap it was for so long. It was okay that in a debt-based society to grow their balance sheet because energy was so cheap. Because energy was cheap, the cost of growing food was cheap, the cost of producing cars was cheap, everything was cheap. But then this happened. And this is the essence of Putin's checkmate. When Russia entered Ukraine and we started throwing sanctions on them, the entire Western civilized world started throwing sanctions on Russia. Russia didn't really care so much. Putin said in speeches, bring it on, bring the sanctions on, because it's going to hurt you guys a lot more than us, which is true. We saw a temporary blip there in the ruble. Remember when the Western leaders were all so proud of themselves when the ruble went down 75% in value in a matter of days because of the sanctions that they put on Russia, in addition to throwing them off the SWIFT system. And then with a matter of a couple of weeks, ruble was trading at a brand new high. The ruble right now is one of the strongest currencies in the world. I haven't heard a peep out of these politicians since then. I mean, these guys should be really embarrassed. They screwed up so badly. The only thing that they've done, they've turned the West into a basket case. We're hearing stories now of all sorts of energy rationing that's going to be coming up this Christmas. Energy prices going through the roof. Okay. In 1 month, the gas bills for the people in Britain went up 80%. And I think they're up quite a bit more since then. And they're going to continue to go up. All right. And as a solution to this, the government says, well, anything above a certain level, the government will cover. So how are they going to do that? They're going to print money. These people never learned their lessons. Anyway, so Putin is sitting back. Not sure. I'm sure that the sanctions is having some effect on the economy in Russia. But keep in mind, the Russians have a history of hard living, right? These people know what it's like to do without. We in the West, we're pretty soft. Okay, we're not used to having rolling blackouts. We're not used to having to turn our heat down in cold weather. We're not used to having really expensive gas prices. We're not used to spending, half our paycheck for gasoline for our cars. So I think Russians are in a better position. Inflation in Russia is not really running that high, whereas inflation in the West is out of control. But because the Western countries drew a line in the sand, they said, for moral reasons, we're going to stick it to Russia. Okay, we're not going to buy your oil. We're not going to buy your gas. We're not going to take your food. Russia said, that's fine. I've got customers over here who will take it. No worries. So in the West, we're going to have food shortages. We're going to have gas hikes. The cost of living in the West is going to go up and up and up. And our quality of life is going to go down and down and down. And why? Because Putin said, you know what? We're having a little trouble with our gas line here. It doesn't seem to want to turn on. So, you know what? We're going to turn it down and do some maintenance on it. Then a few weeks later, the spokesperson for the Kremlin came out and said, you know what? I think we'll keep that gas turned off until you decide to lift your sanctions. Now, people in the West, Germany shut down all their nuclear power plants. Now, Germany is the economic engine of Europe, right? And they're the ones that are going to be the hardest hit because they're the ones that unfortunately is more closely reliant on Russian natural gas. And of course, because of these progressive Green New Deals, lollipop and rainbow economic policies coming out of the WEF that all of these Western countries have adopted now, they're trying to run their countries off of windmills, also known as bird blenders, right? Where are you, environmentalists? Or solar panels, which, by the way, birds have a habit of blowing up on them because they land in solar panels and it's so hot they blow up. So this fairy tale notion of a global solution has put Europe and the rest of the Western countries in a very perilous position. And this is why it's going to get worse. Even if Germany wanted, you don't just turn on a nuclear power plant. Okay, once you decommission it, it's a long process to get it back up and running again. So even if they wanted to, we're talking about ways to get it back online. We're hearing stories, by the way, of Germans going into the forest, now their famous Black Forest, and cutting down trees like crazy for firewood. If you look at pictures of Sri Lanka, by the way, and look at a year-over-year satellite image, 1 year it was green, and within a year it was brown. Why? Because Sri Lanka, they wanted to go ESG. They wanted to get all those credits with a high ESG score, which means they adopted these Green New Deal policies, and now people had to cut down in order to cook their food. So I've got about 8 more slides that I wanted to get to make my point, to make more elaborate points. But I got to tell you, let's just cut to the chase. The Western countries, primarily in Europe, they put themselves in a very precarious position. And Putin right now can sit back. All he has to do is turn off the gas. And that's our pressure point, okay? The person who controls the energy, the person who controls the food, and the person who controls the money controls you, all right? And just by turning off the gas, he's controlling access to your cheap energy. And cheap energy is the basis of a strong economy, especially a debt-based economy. The West, we are a debt-based economy. All we've done is taken on debt, taken on debt, taken on debt. Now, as interest rates start to go up in order to fight inflation, that's just going to have a knock-on effect. So now the mortgage payments on that $500,000 house that you bought is doubling. You're going to see real estate collapse. You're going to see the price of food going through the roof. You're going to see the value of everything coming down. So what does this mean for us? What can we do? Okay, the first thing you have to do is, if you can, get out of debt. Okay, that should be priority one, is try to get out of debt. Now, the next most important thing you can do is transfer your fiat currencies into gold and silver. Okay, don't put in gold and silver mines. Don't put in gold and silver, certificates. Don't buy mutual funds. Look, you got to buy the actual physical gold that you can hold it in your hand. If you don't hold it, you don't own it. Okay, you got to get gold and silver. This is the only money in the world. Fiat currencies are going to be collapsing. They're already collapsing. That's what inflation is. Inflation means the buying power of your currency is going down. So any fiat currency you have sitting in the bank or in your hand is losing your money. It's a depreciating asset. Now, of course, you have to have some fiat currencies to pay monthly bills and stuff, but as much as possible, get your fiat currencies into gold and silver. I'm kind of wandering into the subject matter of other videos regarding fiat currencies and inflation and getting your money out of the bank, but you know where I'm going. Probably the single most important thing you can do is get some of your money out of the bank, because there is going to be a financial crisis, and when that hits, you're not going to be able to get your money out of the bank. Okay. Matter of fact, it's even hard to get your money out of the bank right now, even when there's not a financial crisis. Get some money out of your bank, get some of that money into gold and silver, and then find some streams of passive recurring income. I can't help you with the first one. For the other two, acquiring gold and silver, I've got a program that's really good for that. And for passive recurring income, I've got some programs for that too. So if you want to look into those, just look below. My contact information will be below. Just look for the email address. This winter is going to be a really tough winter, especially for my friends in Europe. So I wish you the best. Okay? Start preparing, guys. Okay, you know what to do, right? Make sure you got lots of water, lots of food, and financially, get some of your assets into gold and silver, because the value of your currencies are going to be going down even faster. So you got to find a way of preserving your buying power. All right. So look out for yourselves. That's it for now. Please subscribe. Please give the video a like, and please give me a comment. Edward Anderson signing out.
Copy that.